Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we're going to be going over some updates to the 5.2 promotional site for Final Fantasy XIV. We are patiently waiting on patch 5.2. We have our live letter on February 6th, and with that our prediction of a February 18th launch seems to be almost certain. Now with that, we like to analyze these promo sites for a little tidbits, a little bit of speculation here and there, and to generate some discussion around what is otherwise a very dull time for Final Fantasy XIV. So, probably some spoilers ahead if you haven't done 5.0, 5.1 stuff, but in that case, this thing on its own, was probably almost a bit of a spoiler. Not really, but, you know, you've been warned at the very least. So the first section is about the main scenario, and the description that's given here is, like, as generic as it can get, I find, and they're probably doing that because they really want to conceal how the story is going to unfold in 5.2 and in 5.3, which would be our big finale of the Zodiac storyline. So we have, with Yulmar on the path to a brighter tomorrow, the Scions await such time as the Exarch might return them home. Not in idleness, however, for when has any world been content to grant its heroes respite? Yeah, you could really throw half of that onto almost any patch and it'd be like, okay, yeah, they're just talking about the patch. Obviously, other than the might return them home part. Here, the first screenshot of 3, we have Ardbert, who's very clearly not Ardbert based on what we saw in 5.1. It's almost definitely Elidibus, but, you know, there's always some wiggle room for them to surprise us. You know, I'm just willing to bet it's Elidibus. Now, the second screenshot brings me an unusual amount of joy to see Raubon and Gaius in the same room in this Alamigan war room right here. I have an unusual amount of joy seeing a scene like this. As well as our other guests that are here in the room. And this is no doubt, since this is under the main scenario section, I assume that we'll come to this part on the source as a means of breaking off and then continuing the side story quest for the Sorrow of Warlit. But it's just nice to see. I like it. And I hope we get to see more of that dynamic of seeing Gaius, you know, this main antagonist going all the way back to Realm Reborn and his interactions with the rest of Eorzea. And we'll be talking a little bit more about the Sorrow of Warlit a bit later. We also have Y'shtola here, and it looks like we're back in the Ronkin ruins here. If I'm not mistaken, obviously we can't see her face. That's one of the Viera of the wood that protects this area, and it looks like looking for some answers in the Ronkin ruins. They are very ancient ruins, and were one of my favorite parts of the Shadowbringers base story. So I do hope that there's a lot more secrets tied under here, maybe some teases of things to come, but that's pretty much what they do with these screenshots anyway. And that's it for the main scenario, screenshots and details that they have here. Now, on the first, and they make sure to separate between the first and the source, which is an interesting prospect. First of all, we have Eden's Verse. This will be the second of 3 raid series for Eden's Verse. Having taken control of the gargantuan Sin Eater known as Eden, Reen continues her quest to restore the dormant elements of the Empty with Urian J. Thancred and the Warrior of Darkness by her side every step of the way. That's a run-on sentence if I've ever seen one. Yet the awakening of the enigmatic young woman may put the mission in jeopardy. Will this erstwhile foe continue to pose a threat, or is there more to her heart than darkness? Of course, Tetsuya Nomura designs a character, and we have to talk about darkness. Yes, this is Gaia. For those of you who don't remember her, she was initially unveiled, if I'm remembering correctly, at the Japanese fan festival prior to Shadowbringers launch, in which they said Tetsuya Nomura would be coming on as a guest designer for certain aspects, including this character of the Eden's Verse raid. Some people were pretty surprised to see her. I've seen, you know, oh look, Jessica Jones is in Final Fantasy XIV now. And there's a few more pictures, one of which was the one they showed us back in March. But this is the Voidwalker. For those who don't know, this is what's underneath all of that armor. And as she is described back in Eden's Verse 1, it was Eden's Gate? Yeah, I think it was Eden's Gate for the first one. She is the Oracle of Darkness, which doesn't really mean anything much to us, but we can draw some parallels to the way that Reen is treated as the Oracle of Light, and assume that she holds a similar role, that she is doing something to protect the Void or the 13th, or some sort of hope to restore the 13th to some sort of previous manner. That's at least the speculation that I'm holding on to, but other than that, no other screenshots. Like I said, down below are a few extra screenshots of her, but nothing of Eden's Verse overall. Not even that Ramuh artwork or that arena artwork that looked to be the Thunder Plains from Final Fantasy X that we saw during the last live letter. Now, this excited me the most. The Anamnesis Anidar, our only dungeon for patch 5.2, and reminder, we'll only be getting 1 dungeon for each patch in 5.2 and onward. Now, deep in the Tempest, deeper still than the Phantom Amaurot of Emmett Selk's design, lies what remains of the Anidar's ancient edifices. What slumbers forgotten in this bed of knowledge, even the Ondo know not. I love that we're not going to the Phantom Amarot, which canonically is supposed to fade away. Not just into the ruins that you see here, but completely disappear because it's all a fabrication of Emet-Selch's memory of the last day of the world that he knew, before he had to sacrifice half of the living beings on the planet in order to bring about Zodiark in the first place. So that means we're going to something real here, tangible, something that feels like a progression of what's, what should be naturally transpiring down in the Tempest. So with that, we'll get a more authentic look at how all those structures have aged since then. And I love the screenshot that they show us here, specifically looking like something that's been, water damaged and taken over by the elements that is the Tempest. There's also a little treasure chest spoiler there in case you weren't sure where the treasure chests were. There's one right there. And then we also have this almost Dragon Quest looking Cyclops boss. Yeah, probably, whatever, dungeon bosses are, pretty straightforward most of the time. So don't expect too much. You can see the gate on the left signifying that they're locked away from, exiting or entering. But it's still a good looking design for this, this horned Cyclops looking thing. And of course, there's bound to be some very important lore and story to be discovered here. So anyone who's into that kind of thing should be excited for the Animate Nesis Anitor. Now we go back to the source, and this is where the Sorrow of Warlit comes into play. This is going to be our side story quest that deals with the weapons, our Final Fantasy VII weapons, and how they're going to be thrust into the Final Fantasy XIV universe and canonized in Eorzea itself. So for the Sorrow of Warlit, the Garlean Empire seeks to break the stalemate with Eorzean forces by unleashing the culmination of its twisted experimentation, a brutal war machina that exists only to destroy. On both sides of the battlefield, shadows of the past loom large as the decisive clash draws ever closer. So it seems like we are trying to bring some sort of finale to the clash between Eorzea and the Garleans, even though it's in a side story quest. What's interesting to me is, even though we got kind of a peek at this with Arc Ultima in 5.1, is that the Garleans are seeking to break, but they were, last we left them in 5.1, there was almost like another war of succession going on because the Emperor was dead and Xenos was out. He wants nothing to do with any of that situation now. So the fact that they're seeking to break the stalemate tells me somebody's already won that war of succession. And I wonder if it'll be someone we know already, or if it'll be somebody brand new, but someone that deals with Gaius's past. Because I feel like Gaius is going to be integral to this, not just because he's a Garlean, but because of his knowledge of the people who live there, of the military forces in particular. So I'm looking forward to this. That's just another picture of Ruby Weapon. We saw this during the last live letter, as well as he will be the first of the encounters that we face in the Sorrow of Warlit, as well as a couple of Al-Ra, who are dressed in some fancy garb, and we don't really know anything about them. So there's not much to say about that, other than, of course, divining, what tribes they're from based on their specific features and whatnot. And that's all they've updated for the 5.2 website. I did make mention that there were some additional screenshots below. This was the artwork we saw of Gaia back at the Japanese Fan Festival, so we've known this is what the Voidwalker was going to look like for quite some time now. This is just another in-game render of her versus the actual artwork we see, this time without her hammer. And then we have another rendered artwork of Gaius, because, we can always use more of those. But that's going to be it for this covering the 5.2 site. In case you didn't see the first video, here's a list of all the other things that are going to be coming, as well as some of the things that are listed here. And there's more coming on top of that. And there's stuff we still haven't yet to see. And we have a live letter in a week, so hopefully we get to learn even more then. But let me know what you think about some of these little revelations and speculations that you can start to divine from the 5.2 website details. Put that in the comment section of the video below. And thank you for spending your time watching this video. I'll be bringing you anything 5.2 related as it comes out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. And until then, take care.